I'm going to keep it simple and plain with you. It's about time that we start putting some respect on the name of Dr. Paul A. Bryant. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU, your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off doesn't mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert. We're going to wrap up today's episode by looking at the HBCU All-Star Games, which were both characterized by close, dramatic finishes. In segment 2, Diamond Johnson wasn't a part of it, but she was at an all-star game of her own, and she stole the show in a way that we all expected. But segment 1, I think it's time that if you don't know the name, first off, get familiar with the name. That's number one. If you do not know the name of Dr. Paul A. Bryant, that is the athletic director at Alabama A&M. So that's number one. If you don't know him, now you know. But it's time that we put some respect on the name of Dr. Paul A. Bryant. When you look at what he's done, because as a school, 9 times out of 10, you are going to be judged for your power sports, football and basketball. And that extends out with the branching of men's and women's basketball. If you look at that trinity, it starts in his headline with the coaches, but it does not stop there. You look at the coach, Sam Shade. You look at the coach, Donte Jackson. You look at the coach, Dawn Thornton. When you're looking at that trio, that's a powerful three. Like, let's just go through it, right? Football is your sport. That's what you're going to be judged by, even more so than basketball. At football, you got Sam Shade. That's the reigning SIAC champion from Miles College. That's a big-time hire. You're looking at basketball. Men's basketball, you got Donte Jackson. And in Donte Jackson, you have a guy who is a champion from just a year ago. Like, this is the thing. When I talk about putting some respect on the name of Dr. Paul A. Bryant, it's because these hires that he's made are all splashes. And they're not, oh, look at the big name from national, whatever, like those things that we tend to talk about. When you talk about Dr. Paul A. Bryant's most recent hires, and within basically a calendar year, within basically a year span, he has hired Sam Shade as the football coach, Donte Jackson as the men's basketball coach, and Dawn Thornton as the women's basketball coach. Those latter two, both of the basketball coaches, he took from, both of those latter two, he took those coaches from teams within the SWAC. Donte Jackson came over from Grambling. He won a championship just a year ago. Dawn Thornton was a big take from UAPB, and she led them to their best season in Division I history. So you're looking at the splashes now. We don't know how Shade and Jackson are going to work out. We haven't seen that yet. But I can say that they come in with a lot of hype. I can say that they come in with a lot of promise. I can say they come in with a history of success. Dawn Thornton, she came over and she's been here for a year. And she showed what she can do in her debut season. I actually didn't even want to record this until the very last minute. Like, I'm in the very last minute of recording this. I'm hoping that I'm able to bring this to you at 6:30 on the dot. That's how close that I'm cutting it right now. But the reason I wanted to wait is because Live for Hoops had reported that Dawn Thornton is a finalist, and I believe she said favorite, but definitely a finalist for the Morgan State job. So because of that, I didn't want to record and say how big of a hire that this is, because what if she leaves before I could report it and give it to you? So I waited to the very last minute to be able to do this. But like I said, the impact of Dr. Paul A. Bryant extends beyond just the field or just beyond the court. It's also about the revenue. It's also about the opportunity. It's also about the looks because, yes, he's had great hires. I love the hiring of Shade, Thornton, and Jackson. And we've seen a picture of them, or Mo sent me a picture of them. And it's like, wow, that's really a powerful trinity when you think about it. But beyond just who you hire, you look at football, the choice to step away from the Magic City Classics payment plan, right? The way that they divide up the money and to go on your own and say, I'm going to take a risk that I believe can ultimately raise my financial ceiling. And I think that it will. I think that it was a smart risk to take. I think it was a smart gamble, good gamble. I don't even want to say risk, even though that's what it is at the end of the day. Paul A. Bryant said, look, you're paying us this. We know we could make this by ourselves, and I'm going to get paid each year in this format. I wish I had it just readily available so I could break down the numbers, but essentially there was a cap. There was a flat rate that you were going to get paid for the Magic City Classic. No matter what, you're going to get paid that. So the risk is you could do worse than the flat rate. But I don't necessarily think you will. And the ceiling is significantly higher. I think the floor is about similar and the ceiling is much higher. So I love that move. Skyrocket that ceiling. Alabama women's basketball, they came to town. That's a big look. Most times when you get a school, if it's Alabama A&M versus Alabama, you expect that to be in Tuscaloosa. I don't care if it's football, men's basketball, women's basketball, softball, baseball. It don't matter. You expect that to be at the big school. For you to be able to bring Alabama women's basketball to A&M, Alabama A&M, then that is a huge move. That is something that is going to get a bunch of people in the seats. The stands are going to fill out. Ironically, that's still not the most attended women's basketball game in the new arena. That arena looks amazing, by the way. I don't think that he spearheaded that. I think he kind of came in right when they announced it, if not a little bit after, or a little bit after it was completed, I should say. But still, that's a nice stadium. I mean, that's a nice arena. But anyway, that's the top 25 team that you brought into that new arena. There are so many things that Dr. Paul A. Bryant has done. We need to put some respect on his name. See, when we talk athletic directors, tends to be whether or not they get hired, fired, right? Like if we're talking athletic director, we're talking about the fate of their job, whether they just got it or if they just lost it. But we talk about Ashley Robinson and the hires that he's had, and I know that he's made some splashes. I'm not trying to put them next to each other and have a versus or anything. But what I am here to say is that we need to put some respect on Bryant to say that he is one of the better salesmen. He's one of the better businessmen when it comes to operating within this space. Because if I just go through the Trinity, like I said, you get judged based off of football and basketball. Football, your head coach is Sam Shade. He's coming off of a championship season with Miles College. This is a big splash, and I told people we need to look for Shade and a few other coaches, but Shade was the one who ended up landing somewhere, and this gives me a lot of Chennis Berry feels. It really does. Then you look at basketball, Donte Jackson. In 2024, he was listed as the best minority head coach of all schools on the Division I level. In 2024, he was the SWAC Coach of the Year. He was the regular season champion. He was the tournament champion. He won a first four matchup. You look at Dawn Thornton. She's the only one who's been here for a year, and she had the best season in D1 history for the school. I think it's very difficult to not praise this triumvirate of coaches. You have two coaches who are heavily hyped because they haven't coached yet for this school. So you can only base off of hype. And that hype comes from a strong history, a strong resume. And then you have one coach who's been there and she's delivered. In your big three sports, you can't ask for more. This is a phenomenal job by Dr. Paul A. Bryant. And I think it's time that we put some respect on his name. Now, as we push forward, I want to look at Diamond Johnson. I don't have to campaign to put any respect on her name. I think we all know who Diamond Johnson is. We all know what she's about. And on Saturday at the Lily All-Star Game, she was able to show everybody what she's about. And there's a little extra aspect to this that she destroyed that I want to preview as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Intuit Turbo Tax. Now, listen, There was waiting and wondering and worrying. That's what taxes used to be. And then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now, taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on the progress so you can find, or excuse me, so you can continue and focus on your day-to-day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get back the most money guaranteed. No waiting, no worrying, no wondering. Now that's taxes. Use an expert now on turbotax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on Cougs. You know who I'm rooting for? My guy Parker. I'm rooting for him. I've been shouting it out every day. So hopefully, after you listen to me, you can go listen to a national champion. That's my fingers crossed. Shout out to the boys across Scott. Anyway, Diamond Johnson wins All-Star MVP, but it's not the All-Star game that you thought she was going to be in. We previewed the HBCU All-Star game, and one of the things that we talked about and that we discussed was Diamond Johnson being the biggest player to watch. I would even argue of everybody in the men's and women's game, Diamond Johnson was the player to watch. She has the best stock. She's the biggest name. I think that she had the most to gain here because here's the thing. If I can move from a 9 to a 10, that might seem smaller than a person who can move from a 3 to a 6. But moving up to that 6 is not the same as moving up to that 10. The stakes are not the same. And when it comes to Diamond Johnson, the stakes are high the entirety of this draft process. Everything she does will be scrutinized unlike anyone else in the HBCU ranks because she has a draft stock that is unlike anyone else in the HBCU ranks. And if we're talking about scrutinizing performances, if we're talking about being under a microscope, if we're talking about the pressure to deliver, Diamond Johnson rose to the occasion because she didn't go to the HBCU All-Star Game. Instead, she went to the Lilies All-Star Game. And with that comes the competition level. That's one thing that is with her. I'm not sure how big of a deal it is because you played on the mid-major level outside of HBCU. So I don't know if people are using that against her because they can actually pull up film of her at Rutgers. Like they can actually pull up that tape. But anyway, let's just assume that the 2 years she spent in Norfolk State, people are questioning if she can do it at this level now. Playing in an all-star game with other big school prospects, I think destroys a comp level. I'm unaware of how important that this all-star game is. What I can tell you is that there are players from Alabama, because you had Zay Green, former UAPB player who was there, and she was now at Alabama. So you have players from the SEC level. I can tell you that Diamond Johnson was being coached by Cheryl Miller, a legend. I can tell you that these things do matter. Like if we're just talking about playing in the game and showcasing your talent, she had the opportunity to do that. And I feel like she did a really good job. How well? She was the MVP. How well did she do? She ended up being the most valuable player in that game. When we spoke about Diamond Johnson, I guess Friday, maybe even Thursday, because we talked about her a couple of times last week. But when we talked about Diamond Johnson, what we said was that Diamond Johnson needs to dominate because Diamond Johnson is looked at as the top prospect. And if we're talking about Johnson needing to dominate in the HBCU All-Star Game, it's solely because people are talking about competition. Oh, well, that's HBCU talent. And while we may not like that people say it, we are very aware and we will not be ignorant enough to act like it does not exist. We may not want it to exist, but it does. And if she would have went to the HBCU All-Star Game, that could have been used against her. So she needed to dominate. In this game, I think she just needed to look good, but she still came out and dominated. She still came out and dominated. And to me, this is don't you ever again try to question if I'm a product of my level. Don't ever try to, it feels terrible saying that, but I understand the real. Don't ever try to say that I only did this at an HBCU level. Don't ever try to say I couldn't do this elsewhere. I chose to go to Norfolk State. I chose to go here and put on for my university, to put on for HBCUs, because when you get her in this All-Star game, she ends up going crazy, dropping 21 points, going 9 from 13, 9 of 13 from the floor. Like, this is important. These are things that we have to talk about, because I didn't expect her to be the facilitator that I know she can be. I expected her to be a scorer. And when you come out into an All-Star game, you don't have the chemistry with these people. You don't know what way they like to roll. You don't know where they like to have the pass. There's so many different aspects of being a good point guard that it's kind of difficult to have right away in an All-Star game at times, especially when people are trying to prove something. So instead, she goes into scoring mode. 9 of 13 from the field, 21 points. She has threes. She has mid-range. She has driving to the bucket. She has delivering through physicality, through contact. So, like, all of these aspects of her game are on full display. And Diamond Johnson has showed herself to be the full package. She also adds in 4 rebounds and 2 steals. See, when we talk about Johnson, she's not just an offensive prospect. Yes, she can score the ball. Yes, she can facilitate, but she also is really good at being a pickpocket. She's also really good at knowing when to shoot a gap, knowing when to have help defense, knowing when to throw her hand out there and not get in the reach, and not just throw a hand and get off balance. She's a really good timely defender. And that, to me, doesn't get enough attention. So I want to highlight the 2 steals that she had in this All-Star game, because all of it goes into painting why she was the MVP. All of it goes into painting why she was able to live up to the expectation of what we always knew she could be. And like I said, the only thing that wasn't really highlighted was the assist, but I think that there's good reason for that. Now, when you're sitting here as your draft stock goes, and I'm playing against teams or players from Alabama, I'm playing against players from Big 10, against Big 12, ACC. Like I'm playing against everybody. At this point, I'm playing against everybody who was not in the tournament. So probably let's just assume Final Four teams, they didn't have their players there. Obviously, the national championship teams didn't have their players there. But outside of all of that, everybody was there. Everybody you could choose from, any school was there. This is the top-notch players. Like I said, I don't know how big of a deal that this game is. It was gone for 18 years and then it returned last year. So I don't know how big of a deal it is, but I can tell you who she played against. I can tell you who she was coached by. And I can tell you that all of those things genuinely matter. So 21 points, 9 of 13 from the field, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. This was in a versatile, I want to be very clear, a very versatile display shooting. You've seen her drive. You've seen her finish through contact. You've seen her have mid-range. You saw her post up on the corner. She knocked down the game-winning three-pointer. She was a beast in the second half. Really started in the second quarter and just heated up from there, but just efficient, defensive, offensive, right? Like, she showed every aspect of her game. I think that she is such a fluid prospect that I'm glad she was able to showcase that in this game. Now, as we push forward, I want to look at the HBCU All-Star Game, both the men's and the women's team, because this was a close game. And I think that's the definition or the defining trait of this game, of both games, excuse me. And I want to look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? I was feeling good just a week ago. But between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO all in your pocket, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't about just being a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. It allows you to track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on food delivery, DoorDash, and whatnot. And it's easy. Just go get it. But anyway, maybe that's just me. The all-in-one convenience of no longer having to juggle multiple apps is my personal favorite aspect of it all. Now it's on you. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day all the way, every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I want to review this All-Star game because both the men and women's games were marked by close matchups. Sometimes when you have All-Star games, you're sitting here like, this ain't entertaining. This ain't a good game. And I think you teeter between who wants a good game and who wants just offense all day. And I don't think that makes a good game. It can. And we underrate that sometimes, that the excitement of it does make it good. But this was a quality matchup. It felt like 2 teams who were playing against each other for something. Because both of these games ended up being very close. At the end of the game, they came down to the last shot within 5 seconds, 15 seconds. So like this is a close matchup that could have went either direction on both sides. Now, on the men's side, it was Team Love who made the comeback. It wasn't a huge comeback. I'm not going to dramatize and I'm not going to gas it up. But Team Love was down 87-82 with a little less than 3 minutes. That's only 5 points. That's not too much, right? It's not about the deficit for me, though. When it comes to the men's game, it was not about the deficit. It was about the comeback. It was about how it happened. So it went from 87-82 and then had a 10-2 run, right? And then became 92-89. That's the difference, is that Team Adams was up 7 points or 5 points. They had 87 and they just failed to score. They just failed to score the ball, and they allowed Team Love to get up 10 points or get 10 points up to their 2 on a 10-2 run. And that late run, it was fluid. I'll give him that, right? I don't want to get into all the specifics of this shot happened and this shot happened and this shot happened and this happened. But it's the fact that you go on a late run and it's like you could have packed it in. You don't get anything from this. You don't get any win-loss. You don't get any official stats. You could have packed it in. Nah, who cares? But that wasn't there. That was good offense, good tough makes, and it gets to 92-89, and now you knock down a three-pointer. Now you look at Cameron Hobbs, who knocks down a three-pointer. And, okay, cool. It's 92 up. I'm feeling like it's about to go to OT. I don't know if OT was even an option. Sometimes All-Star games don't do OT. But I'm thinking we're about to go into overtime, and I'm really disinterested with the idea of it just because it's the All-Star game. It's not important. But we get more basketball, so I'll take it, right? Then you have, make sure I get the name right, Jordan Hines from Bluefield State. He drives down the court. Boom, layup. Nice little move. I think that was Christian Ings who tried to get him, hit him with a hook up. And it was a good move to avoid the defender. And it was the most fluid game win I had seen in a while as far as driving. It just felt a little too easy. But it was a very fluid response to a strong 3. Because that 3 did make it seem like not only did it even the score, but it also evened the momentum. Because Love had been building and building and building. It was a 10-2 run. So, of course, you've been building progress and building momentum. It felt like everything was going their way. When you knock down that 3 from the top of the key, you even up the game, but you also even up their momentum because now the pressure's back on Team Love. They're no longer up 3. It's not, hey, just get fouled and you make your free throw at least. No, it's 3 points. You probably want to try to get the last shot. But even that's a stressful thing of knowing you only have one shot at it. Unfortunately for Ados, they drove all the way down quickly. But anyway, Hines, he was the CIAA Player of the Year. He ended up being the MVP of the game as well, scoring 14, including that game-winning shot. But then you look on the women's side, it was close too. It was a close battle. And I want to highlight Talia Wesley from Allen real briefly because she knocked down a three-pointer to win the game. And that was the difference. So on the men's side, you had a 3-point to tie. On the women, you had a 3-point to win. And it was tough. It was back and forth. You knocked down a 3-pointer, and then the other squad didn't even get a shot up. after that. So I'm glad that they did the women's game. I'm glad that they did the men's game. And I know we focused primarily on Diamond Johnson. So I did want to focus on Johnson and then focus on the men in season 3. That was crazy. But, or segment 3. But I did want to do that. But I wanted to mention that there was also a game winner by Wesley in the women's side. This was a really fun matchup. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to take a look at Walker Harris, who I think is going to be under a little bit more pressure in season 2 as a starting quarterback, because you have 1 year under your belt and you no longer have a Jamari Taylor. That means more pressure on your quarterback. Let's get into that on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.